Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but what does that actually look like? Look no further than iExcel, the ultimate online learning and teaching platform for K to 12. iExcel gives you meaningful insights that drive real progress, and research can prove it. Studies in nearly all 50 states across the U.S. show that schools that use iExcel outperform other schools on state tests. Educators who use iExcel love that they can easily see how their schools are performing in real time to make better instructional decisions. And iExcel doesn't stop at just data. iExcel also brings an entire ecosystem of resources for your teachers with a complete curriculum, personalized learning plans, and so much more. It's no wonder that iExcel is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts. Ready to join them? Visit iexcel.com/PM to get started.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Welcome back, Principal Matters podcast listeners. I am Dr. Jen Schwanke, and I'm here with my co-host, William Parker. And hi, Will.
How are
Jen.
you? I'm doing great.
It's late July. Are you melting out there in Oklahoma?
My gosh, it is so hot in Oklahoma, but I can't complain about reality. I mean, it's always this hot in late July, but by the time this recording comes out, I will have also made a quick trip back to Tennessee to hang out with my family. My brother lives in the house that my mother and father raised us in back on the farm, Jen. So it's just always so fun.
Well, it's going to be hot there too. So
it will be. So we're going to spend a little time on the lake. And you might know or may not know that when I was growing up, we grew up on a farm, but we spent most of our summers when I became a teenager in Kentucky Lake, which is the Tennessee River runs through that area, and it's dammed up north of where we lived. And so mussel shells were a huge market back when I was in high school and college. And so my father taught us how to find and sell shells when we were going into junior high and high school. So all the way through high school and even in my first couple of years of college, I would spend my summers crawling on the bottom of that lake, looking for shells and selling them. And it was a great job. I was able to buy my first car. It helped support me through college. But being on the water is one of my favorite parts of my summer and my memories.
Well, we did not rehearse this, listeners. We did not rehearse it. But what we're talking about today on Monday Matters is Will and water and being on the lake. Will, you received an invitation to go sailing, and you and your son went. So why don't you tell us about that? And then we're going to kind of circle around to some thinking that you've done about sailing upwind. So tell us about the invitation.
Yeah. So if he's listening, I just want to say a quick thank you to a longtime listener, Dave Sandowich, who's a retired principal from New Jersey with 20 plus years of administrative experience, but he lives in Maryland now, right off the Chesapeake Bay. And I was so thrilled this summer when he invited my son, Jack, who's now 20, to come up for some sailing. And this would be the third time, Jen, that I've gotten a chance to go out with Dave on the water. But we did a 60-mile, 3-day trip right outside of Kent Island. We went to Annapolis. We then went south to a quiet cove. And I mean, it was not only thrilling and beautiful and sunny, and being with Jack and a good buddy, it was so joyous. But I love learning, and Dave is such a great teacher. And I actually wrote about the first time I sailed with him back in 2019. Can you believe it? And so I found this quote from way back when I had been with him the first time. And I want to read it to you listeners, because sailing upwind is way harder than I thought. Dave said this to me the first time we were together, and I kept this quote in my notes. He said, "Sailing is a lot like leadership. On a sailboat, your destination may be directly from where the wind is coming from. A sailboat can't sail directly into the wind, but it can work its way up wind by sailing at angles off the wind and working its way upwind to the destination. It is more work and it will take more time, but you get there if you stay the course, apply your sailing knowledge, get the feedback from your instruments and instincts, and adjust along the way." And so I just wanted to bring that conversation to this Monday Matters, because whenever I think about resistance and leadership, I think about sailing into the wind. And Jen, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has stepped into a new year, stepped into a new situation and expected, everybody's just going to go right along with what I'm thinking. And then you run into resistance. and how we run into that resistance, whether it's with teachers or students or community members, can teach us a lot about leadership. So let me pause there because you probably have some thoughts before I keep on going with mine.
Well, and I'm thinking how easy it is as a leader, as a sailor, to just want to turn around.
Yeah.
That's always my instinct. Abort the mission. I want to go the other way where the wind will carry me easily. But I know I've never been sailing. So if your friend has, an appetite for it, no, I'm just kidding. But I assume that the progress you make happens by pushing through those moments of despair where you think, well, we're never getting anywhere. Clearly, there's a lot of manipulation that can happen to get you moving forward, even though it's hard and you don't want to. And last week we talked about the hassle of working with other people, but there's such a payoff. I assume that the same thing happens on a sailboat where there's a big hassle in corralling that wind to move forward. And so I think about that too with leadership. Whenever there's a big initiative or whenever there's a problem that we really can't ignore anymore, boy, what a hassle, right? But if you can capture that wind and move you forward, you're always grateful.
Yeah. So I actually brought this question to a group of leaders recently, and I just said, can you think of a time when you've met resistance and what did you learn from it or pushback? And there were several things that were said, and I tried to jot down, me always taking notes. One of them said that pushback causes her to reassess her own understanding of her mission and vision and ask, am I really effectively and clearly communicating it with others? Someone else said, perhaps there's a misunderstanding or misrepresentation of my goals that I need to recommunicate. Someone else said, it's my responsibility to realign expectations while keeping in mind that relationships are complex. Reaching my goal may not be a straight shot. Sometimes I have to work with people. I'm going to add or around people until they come to a clear perspective. And then the last thought that came from that conversation was, I'm sure you've heard this analogy before, but leadership is more like chess than checkers. It requires wisdom to know how to maneuver among people and systems to still reach the outcome you want. And I think that all those things might be easy for me to say and repeat, but living it, and you know this, Jen, living is hard because if we're going to reach a destination that requires that much complexity, you and I know that it requires wisdom.
Right.
And wisdom is not something you can get out of a handbook.
Right.
Now, directions and guidance you can get out of a handbook or a code of conduct, but wisdom sometimes means slowing down and adjusting the sails of what you're doing and maneuvering forward, not just pushing forward.
Well, and you and I have talked, and I think you're planning to write about this. You mentioned the word hard. I believe Dave said something to you about that when you asked him what are some lessons in leadership he's learned along the way, and he actually answered using that word hard. So why don't you tell us about what he said?
Well, this was one of my favorite moments of the trip. It was the last day we were together. We were having breakfast, and Dave and I and Jack, my son, we were talking about some of the lessons. We'd actually just watched a movie the last night together, and it was a nautical movie, and it involved all kinds of, like, Dave was so wise. He chose a movie for us to watch that had some leadership lessons in it. And so the next day we were talking about it, and we were kind of going around in the circle. What are some things you've learned about doing hard things? And Dave said something that really stuck with me. He said, you have to learn to choose your hard. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, take physical fitness. Dave is, I don't think he'll mind me telling you, he's 70 this year. He said, I choose the hard by keeping my workout routine. I don't really want to do push-ups and planks and pull-ups, but I choose the hard rather than the hard of declining health or high blood pressure or losing my mobility. You choose your hard one way or the other. And it was, those like aha moments where you're like, oh, this is going to be one of those moments I'm not going to forget. I haven't, because I have thought about that so much ever since we had that conversation. When I'm stepping into something that seems overwhelming, or maybe something I know I need to do, but I'd rather put it off, I just kind of remind myself about Dave, and I'm like, let me choose my heart here. I can either do the hard thing that's going to help me grow some muscle in the situation, or I can do the other hard thing, which is avoid it and then reap the consequences of that choice. What are you thinking, Jen?
And as you say that, I'm thinking about my favorite topic. Actually, the favorite book I've written is about conflict management, and that's always about choosing hard. It's so easy to ignore it or hope that it goes away. Try to manipulate your way out of it, but the choice to address conflict, to decide how you're going to approach it or what you're going to do. Are you going to ignore it? Are you going to facilitate? Are you going to oversee? Are you going to mediate? Are you going to dictate? Making that choice, we should evaluate in any kind of situation we're working through what's hard now and what will be harder later if I choose poorly on my response. And so I think to capitalize on what Dave said, it's not only about which hard you choose in the short term, it's about long term. And that's what he was saying about working out and staying strong. He's choosing short term hard rather than long term really hard.
Yeah.
And that absolutely applies to the work of principals. There are so many things we can just not do now where the hard is going to just keep increasing if we don't choose wisely on our response.
Well, I'll wrap up with this, Jen, because Dave, he asked me a question when we were together too, because he still does principal coaching, and he was asking me about a leader that he's working with and who's stepping into a new situation and going to be developing some new team members. And he was like, so what are some takeaways you'd want to give to a new leader in that kind of situation? And I said the three things that you and I talk about the most. I said, well, let's talk about people, systems, and belief. And so when I think about sailing into the wind, I'm just going to say three things for listeners. One, invest in your people. That means know your team, gain their trust. Remember that development is not a one-time event. It's an investment over time in people. Two, develop your systems, analyze your operations and your processes and your routines and your procedures, and ask, what is it like to be on the other side of this routine or me? And then align your systems to the outcomes you really want people to experience. And then three, belief is all about collective efficacy. We've talked about that so much, but encouraging among your team members this belief that our collective outcomes matter and the impact that we're having on student learning matters. And if we lose sight that all students deserve that kind of outcome together, then we're just going to be running through the motions. And so for me, part of sailing upwind just means holding on to those principles of people and systems and beliefs.
Right.
Well, Jen, as we wrap up, I just want to encourage Principal Matters listeners, and feel free to add any other thoughts, but as you're sailing into the winds of a new school year, you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to navigate. You're going to have to recalibrate. But there's also a destination and an experience that you're trying to create for those who are with you. And so put that on the map. What is that destination and experience that you want? Just like, Jen, I keep asking you about your experiences in Italy and Greece, because that took a lot of work for you to reach that destination and that experience. And it took a lot of work for my friend to invite us out and take us on that 60 miles of time around that area. But it's worth it.
Well, and let me confess something. Every time I take a trip like that, and it's not my first time to Europe, or I've taken long trips, taken long hikes, taken long drives, and inevitably at the beginning, the first 10 or 15%, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to go home where it's easy and I know what the food tastes like, metaphorically. And then I'm always glad in the end. Always, always, always. And so that's something I just know about myself. I have this button that says abort the mission, and it's not wise. I got to keep going forward.
Oh, Jen, you keep it so real. Thank you for that, the opportunity to share that story. And Principal Matters listeners, as you're stepping into whatever season you're in, you're probably going to have a mix of all of those emotions of, why did I sign up for this on one day, to the next day of pausing long enough to enjoy the laughter and the goofiness of kids, to think, I can never do anything else.
Exactly.
Jen, how can our listeners stay connected with you this week?
Absolutely. Find me at jenschwanke.com. There you can subscribe to my newsletter, or you can drop me an email.
And you can find all of today's notes at my website at williamdparker.com, or at our new address, principalmatterspodcast.com. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters. thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.